everyone! I hope that you're having a great day so far. Today, we will be making some Hollow Knight fan art. I absolutely adore Hollow Knight so much, and I just really felt like making a cute little Hollow Knight pictures, so yeah, let's get into it. I made a bunch of thumbnail sketches for this, so I'm already more prepared than I usually am for a lot of drawings. I often forget to do the thumbnail process, but for this one, I actually remembered it, so we're already one step ahead. Alright, pause for a second. Hi, Editing Ghosty here. You may or may not notice my voice sounds a little bit different right now. The rest of the voiceover for this video has been recorded like 3 or 4 weeks after the footage was filmed. Yeah, so we went to Kyoto for about a week before Christmas, and I ended up catching a cold there. If my voice sounds a little bit scrungly in this video, it's because I'm on the tail end of a cold, so sorry about that. Hopefully it's not too bad, but yeah, in case you're wondering, that's why I sound a little scuffed. Okay, that's all. Back to the video. So the thumbnail sketches I made for this drawing were actually really helpful. It's been a while since I've made a drawing of this caliber. I've been doing a lot of drawings in my sketchbook and whatnot, but it's been a bit since I've done a drawing that has had as much detail as this one does. Like, the style itself is not that complicated, but there ended up being a lot of tiny things within the drawing, so it was a lot of different elements to juggle. And I think that planning everything out with that thumbnail really helped me solidify where I wanted to put everything. So this drawing specifically is based on the area of Hollow Knight called Greenpath. It's my favorite area of the game. It's so pretty. I love all of the plant life and greenery there. It's just beautiful and whimsical and lovely, and I love it. It's amazing. So I wanted to include as many things from Greenpath as I could in this drawing. So here in the right-hand corner of the drawing, we have Hornet, and we're gonna have the little Hollow Knight sitting next to her, or Ghost as people call him. Hornet and Ghost are gonna be sitting on a little bench together, relaxing, taking in the view, because of course, can't have a Hollow Knight drawing without a bench, right? I did a lot of research on the Hollow Knight wiki to figure out what all enemies are in this area of the game, as well as just wandering around the area in the game personally to see what there was. Actually, I ended up having a full reference page in my other little sketchbook you can see off to the side, where I drew out different enemies that are in Greenpath in Hollow Knight, so I could use them as reference without having like a million different tabs opened at any point to look at the different enemies. And I also wrote their names down in the sketchbook so I could remember their names so I could look them up later to see their colors and whatnot. A lot of the enemies in this area of the game are so cute. I love them so much. Like the little Mosskins, adorable. 10 out of 10, so cute. And the Moss Knight is somehow cute and noble looking at the same time. Just amazing, 10 out of 10. I love this section of the game. So as you can see, I'm using little references and just putting all of the elements in with my mechanical pencil, trying to get the sketch down on paper. And I was trying to be careful to make things accurate to how they looked in the game, since I was trying to mimic the game's art style as well. The Wikipedia was absolutely a godsend for this picture. I would not have been able to do this without it. Also, one thing I love about the lanterns in Greenpath is if you look closely, the thing that is creating light in the lanterns are tiny little bugs, like little glowflies. I think they're called Luma flies, I believe. It's a tiny little detail that I think is really cute. Although I will admit, it is kind of strange that bugs are the citizens of this world, and yet they're using bugs as lanterns? Like, is that some sort of Lumafly prison, or what's going on there? Either way, I like it. It's a cool idea. So you can see I put some vines in the corner because there's a lot of viney areas in Greenpath. I slapped down the Moss Knight over there. And then there is a little statue I put up in the top corner that is representing the No Eyes fight. That fight really freaked me out, to be honest. Like, the first time I fought No Eyes in Hollow Knight, I was freaking out, and it was pretty creepy. I actually think it was one of the more creepy parts of the game. Normally, I get little spoopy vibes from Hollow Knight, but yeah, No Eyes was genuinely creepy. It's probably a little hard to see right now, but in the background there is a waterfall and a tiny lake that is supposed to be the acid that you see in Greenpath, or the Forbidden Mountain Dew, as I like to call it. I find that the acid is really pretty looking. I think it's the color, honestly. So I really wanted to make sure I included that. And of course, we have one of the little buggies that walks around in the acid. I forget what they're called, but I can figure it out and put it up on the screen in editing. And then we also have one of those plants that is hiding in the ground, and then it snaps up and tries to eat you like a Venus flytrap. Fun fact, if you didn't know, those plants are called fool eaters, and I think that's so funny. Like, just fool eater, and then they trap you. I am become the fool. Those things have gotten me many times, but I think that's a hilarious name for that enemy specifically. One of my absolute favorite creatures in this section of the game are the Aluba. They are the majestic flying bugs. One of the few flying bugs in this game that are not vicious. I mean, I think they do hurt you if you run into them, but they don't openly attack you. They kind of just glide through the sky and look majestic, and I love them for it. So they'll leave you alone if you leave them alone, but I think they're really graceful looking as you see them floating above the lake of Forbidden Mountain Dew. And the crazy thing about all of these creatures that I'm putting in this picture right now is these are not even all of the enemies that you see in Greenpath. It's only a fraction of them, really. There was no way I could have fit all of the enemies into this drawing, unfortunately. There's just too many, but that really shows just how much love and care they put into designing this game. There's such a variety of bugs to encounter in Hollow Knight. I really cannot overstate how good this game is, truly. And I am very excited for whenever Silksong finally comes out, and 100% will be playing it. It was a little bit tricky for me to try and figure out where I wanted to place all of these little bugs, because I did want to fit as many as I could into the drawing, but yeah, it was a lot of elements to juggle. It's not very typical for me to make a drawing that has so many moving parts within it. Usually I have one or two main pieces and then like a background, you know? So this was a bit of a challenge for me, but I really enjoyed the process. Yes, of course. We can't forget the hunter. The hunter is a very big part of this area of the game. I remember the first time I came across the hunter, I was like, oh no, I'm walking into a boss fight right now. There's no way this isn't a boss fight. Surprise, it wasn't a boss fight. But oh man, he does have ominous vibes. I mean, just look at all those teeth, spiky things. Very ominous, but nope, turns out he just wants you to go collect info on all the bugs. I still have not completed the hunter's journal in the game, but maybe I will. I'm pretty close to doing so in one of my saves. I'll get there eventually. So obviously in Greenpath, one of the main aspects of this area is the nature and just how lush and green everything is there. So for this picture, I have kind of a curtain hanging from the ceiling with hanging vines and flowers that drape down. This was a really important aspect to Greenpath, so I wanted to make sure I captured that greenery as much as I could. Plus, it's just atmospheric, you know? And in the background, it's probably a little hard to see right now, but I do include some of the rock formations up on top of the little cliff there. But yeah, I just go wild with all the greenery. And I also make sure that plants are kind of draping over the cliff as well. It does fade into the black like it does in the game, since I am mimicking the game's art style. But I did want to make sure there was a lot of plants covering at least half of the cliff area. Add some foam to the bottom of the waterfall there to mimic the splashing. Add some more plant details around the picture. And yeah, that pretty much covers the sketching portion. And now we get to the inking part of this picture. So I basically just inked the entire thing in a micron pen. Micron pens are really nice in the sense of they allow you to get really detailed with it. And since this is full of a bunch of small areas, I definitely could not have inked this with anything else besides a micron pen. I really needed that consistency of the thinness that microns give. I didn't do anything too fancy in this process. I kind of just traced over my initial sketch, really. And then I go through with a brush pen and fill in some of the black areas. And well, bam, we're onto the color stage finally. So initially, whenever I decided to make this drawing, I wanted to color it with marker, but yeah, there was no way that was going to happen. Everything is far too small in this drawing to even dream of coloring this in marker, so my only real option for coloring this was using colored pencils, because it's the only thing that could actually get such fine details, which is fine. I actually used to mainly use colored pencils for my art growing up, so I have experience with them. They just take a little bit more time than some other mediums do. So I start out by just doing base colors on all of the characters in the scene. I ended up going back and looking up all the references to try and mimic their exact colors as best as I could with the colored pencils. One thing that was a little bit of a challenge was making sure that I stayed true to the colors of all of these creatures. And at the same time, I wanted them to look cohesive with each other and make sure that they blended and there was nothing that really clashed too much. So that's why I don't go into completing and shading any one creature until I've got the base color down for everything, because I wanted to see how all of the colors were interacting with each other before I got too ahead of myself with completing one specific section of the piece. The acid in Hollow Knight is a very bright green, which normally colored pencils wouldn't really have the color for, but thankfully years ago I purchased a pack of neon colored pencils from Crayola, and they really came in clutch for this drawing. Like, the neon colored pencils were perfect for putting in the color of the acid, which made me happy because I hadn't used the neon colored pencils a whole lot, but they were really helpful for this drawing. And I'm pretty happy with how the color turned out in the Forbidden Mountain Dew specifically. You may notice that the initial pass of color is really light, but that was done intentionally because you can always darken the image, but you can't really lighten the image, so that's why I started out light, and then after shading and everything commences, it does darken up a bit. You kind of work from light to dark when using colored pencil. Coloring all of the greenery and foliage was a little bit painstaking for this, not gonna lie. They use several different colors within their greenery, so I kind of just swap between the different pencils and try to make sure that the same color isn't next to itself a bunch. It took a while to color all of that with constantly switching out the colored pencils. I do think the result was worth it in the end, but whoo boy, it was a lot. Another part that was a little bit tedious was coloring the little cobblestone path that is underneath Hornet and Ghost. Taking the black and going in between all of those stones was a little bit painful. But we did it. We did it. It was just tedious and made me want to weep a little bit. One thing I noticed when I was studying the art style of Hollow Knight was how they did their distant backgrounds. So I decided not to outline things that are supposed to be way in the background. and that way they would be pushed farther back into the distance. I will still be adding a bit of detail to stuff in the very back, but keeping the outline off of it, I think, did help push it into the background a bit. So whenever I started coloring the grass on the ground, I was wondering how I should go about that exactly, because I didn't want to just make it all one solid color. I thought that would make it look really flat. So what I did is I kind of just did different patches using various greens and swapped out between them, because if you look at grass in real life, it's not just one solid green. There's a bunch of different tones of green within it. So that's what I tried to do with the grass there, and I think for the most part it worked out pretty well. And now that all of the base colors are down on the drawing, I got started on the shading part of things. I ended up using black a lot for the shading, which these days I try to not shade primarily with black. Usually I try to use other darker colors for the shading, but when I was looking at the colors of Hollow Knight, a lot of them are actually really desaturated. So black was actually a good candidate for the shading in a lot of areas here. I just tried to be not too heavy-handed with it. Gray was also used a lot for shading. But yeah, if I was using primarily other darker colors, it ended up being too saturated a lot of the time, so I had to be a little bit careful about that. I ended up using a tan color in a lot of places, simply just to desaturate the colors and make them a little bit more muted. Hollow Knight is not a vibrant game, which is interesting because when you look at the game, all of the life and whimsy it has seems very lively, but when you actually look at the colors, they're all pretty dark colors that they used. But they did a really good job with their color picking in that game, and I am impressed. Because while everything is pretty dark, you have no issues at all picking things out on the screen, and everything's very visible, and everything blends nicely with each other, too. Hopefully I achieved the same thing with my drawing, but I don't know. I'll let you guys decide how well I did with that one. I especially used black when shading the vines over on the left. If you look at the vines in the game, they do have a lot of black on them, surprisingly. So that was true to the game. And I did put some more darker greens in there as well to help blend the black into the lighter green. But I'm actually glad that I used black more in this picture besides just the area where the hunter's eyes are and the cliffs, because if those were the only places I used to pitch black like that, they really would have stuck out. So I actually needed to darken up the picture a lot. As you can see, sometimes my cat Kiki was on my lap during this drawing. She helped keep me company while I was making this, and she makes an appearance every now and then. You can see her tail and her little snoot pop into the screen sometimes. So, not to fear, she got many pets while I was working on this project. This is a little off topic, but recently we bought her a little collar, and I was worried that she wouldn't like it because she used to be a stray, but she actually doesn't seem to mind it. It's very cute. It has a little bell on it, so whenever she's trying to slink around the house, she jingles, and it's kind of funny because she's like trying to be all sneaky, but we can definitely hear her, and it makes me happy. She's very cute. Here's a picture of her with her little collar. So as I was nearing the end of the colored pencil stage here, I really was making sure to go through and darken up all of the areas and add a bunch of contrast in, because I really wanted to make sure that nothing was too flat. I wanted to make sure everything popped as it needed to. And I wanted to even out the dark areas of the picture. One thing I did at the very end of the colored pencil process was I actually put in a bit of a gradients. So I took my black colored pencil and I just started from the edges and feathered it out a bit, all the way around the border. I like doing this a lot with digital art, so I thought, well, what's stopping me from doing this in my traditional art too? The gradients essentially just is a really subtle way to draw your eyes to the center of the picture, and I actually think it turned out pretty nice. So, okay, that is the end of the colored pencil stage, but there is one more stage I went through during this picture. Hollow Knight has a lot of little dust motes and some light rays in areas, so I wanted to try and do that in my drawing as well. Now, I was really scared when I was doing this part, you guys. Like, I am not very experienced with paint. Once you put the paint down on the page, there's no going back. So I was really scared that I was going to ruin it after all the hours of hard work. I was terrified. I think it ended up being okay in the end, thankfully, but oh boy, I was nervous, you guys. So at first, I tried using a shimmery watercolor over top of it, but that wasn't really showing up at all. So then I switched to the Hemi gouache that I have. I really watered it down because I didn't want to just put a solid stripe on top of it. Like, it's supposed to be a see-through light beam, so I did several passes with it and kind of built up layers. I started out with a yellowish color at first, but eventually I switched to more of a white because the yellow just wasn't showing up quite the way I wanted it to, but the white really helped, I think. So I have 3 different streaks of the light rays here coming through the grass, and then I go through and place a bunch of little dots around the picture. These are supposed to be dust motes, essentially. It's just an atmospheric thing. I believe Studio Ghibli does this a lot in their movies. So yeah, I wanted to give it a try myself as well. Again, I was really scared about this part because I'm not very used to working with paint. I think I made the dust motes a little bit bigger than I initially wanted, but overall I think it went alright. I took a smaller brush and went over on top of them right in the very middle with a pure white to hopefully get a bit of the glowing effect. I don't know how much it actually shows up, but yeah, I tried. And finally, we come to the satisfying part where we peel the tape off of the drawing. Now, I was using masking tape, and it was kind of stuck to the paper a bit, so it did rip a little in some areas, which was really sad. It wasn't too bad, and I was able to glue it back down again, but yeah, I had to be really careful with this because it was not peeling off nicely. I'm not sure which tape would be best for this kind of thing, like washi tape, maybe? I don't know. Do you guys know what tape is best for peeling off of paper like this without ripping the paper off? Because the thing is, I want it to be sticky enough to protect against paint spreading, right? But man, the ripping of the paper is rough. That's no good either, so I don't know. Let me know if you have any tips for that. I think I've heard some people kind of stick the tape to the table a few times before putting it on the paper, and that gets rid of a little bit of the tackiness, I guess, so that it doesn't stick quite as hard to the paper, and maybe that's what I need to do next time, but thankfully the tearing wasn't too bad. But yeah, here is the final result of the drawing. But yeah, here it is. Let me know what you think in the comments. Also, for those of you who have played Hollow Knight before, I'm very curious, what is your favorite area of the game? Because there are a lot of different sections in Hollow Knight, and all of them are beautiful and wonderful in their own way. So I'm curious about which area is your personal favorite. Thanks so much for watching this video, guys. I appreciate you. If you liked the video, do consider leaving a like down below. It really helps out the channel a lot. I hope that you have a wonderful and delightful rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!